The market street was crowded that afternoon. Wooden stalls lined both sides of the road, filled with fruits, tools, cloth, and animal feed. People moved slowly under the warm sun, talking, bargaining, and laughing. It was the busiest place in town, and everyone knew that if something happened here, the whole town would hear about it by nightfall. Near the center of the market stood a rich man named Louis. His coat was clean and expensive. His boots shined like mirrors. A gold watch hung from his pocket, catching the sunlight each time he moved his hand. He stood beside 3 fast horses, all well-fed and restless, clearly brought from the city. People gathered around, impressed by their speed and beauty. Louis enjoyed the attention. He liked the way people looked at him with respect and envy. To him, wealth was proof of value. Anyone without it was not worth much. That was when he noticed the cowboy. The man stood at the edge of the market, a little away from the crowd. His name was Tom. His clothes were old but carefully kept. His hat had been repaired many times, and his boots showed deep lines from years of hard use. His face was calm, shaped by sun and wind, but his eyes were steady and thoughtful. Beside Tom stood a horse unlike any other. The horse was huge. Its height alone made people stop and stare. Its body was strong and wide, yet it stood calmly, breathing slow and even. Its dark coat looked almost black in the sunlight, and its mane fell thick along its neck. This was not a fast city horse. This was a working horse, built for endurance, not show. Whispers spread through the crowd. Have you ever seen a horse that big? That thing eats more than a family. It looks strong but slow. Louis followed the sound of the whispers and turned his head. When he saw Tom and the giant horse, a wide smile spread across his face. He stepped closer, his cane tapping against the ground. Well, well, Louis said loudly. Look at this. People turned to watch. Tom remained still, one hand resting gently on the horse's neck. The horse did not move. Louis circled them slowly, like a man inspecting something he already believed was useless. This giant horse is your trip to the funeral. Poor man, Louis laughed. One wrong step and it will bury you under its weight. A few people laughed along with him. Others stayed silent, unsure. Tom did not react. He kept his eyes forward. Louis continued, enjoying the moment. Tell me, cowboy, how do you even feed this thing? Does it work, or does it just stand there looking big? Tom finally turned his head. His voice was calm and low. He works, Tom said. He has worked his whole life. Louis laughed again. Work does not matter without money. Strength does not matter without power. Tom looked at Louis for a long moment. Then he spoke again. This horse carried me through drought, storms, and long nights when there was no road ahead. He kept moving when I could barely stand. That is enough for me. The crowd grew quiet. Louis waved his hand dismissively. Stories do not fill stomachs. Pride does not buy land. Look at you, wearing dust, standing next to a walking mountain that will only slow you down. Tom said nothing more. He gently tugged the reins, and the horse followed him without resistance. Each step was steady and controlled. The ground barely shook, despite the horse's size. As Tom walked away, some people noticed things they had not seen before. The horse's legs showed old marks, signs of heavy labor. Its calm eyes showed awareness, not dullness. There was trust between man and animal, clear and deep. Near one stall, an elderly woman watched them leave. She leaned on her walking stick and whispered softly, "Big things are not always weak. Quiet people are not always poor inside." Louis did not hear her. He was already turning back to his audience. "Now," he said loudly, "let me show you real horses." But something inside the crowd had shifted. A few people glanced toward the road where Tom had gone. Something about the cowboy's calm had stayed with them. Outside the town, the dirt road stretched wide and empty. Tom walked beside the horse, not riding him. He spoke quietly, words meant only for the animal. "You did well," Tom said. The horse lowered its head slightly, as if understanding. Tom's life had never been easy. He had lost land, lost family, and lost chances that never returned. But through it all, this horse had stayed. When others walked away, the horse remained. When work was heavy, the horse did not stop. Tom did not care about laughter from rich men. He cared about survival, trust, and the next sunrise. Behind him, in the town he left, Lewis continued to boast. He spoke of deals, land, and future plans. He believed the world belonged to those who spoke the loudest. What he did not know was that the road ahead would soon test strength in a way money could not control. And when that moment arrived, it would not be the fast horses or the loud laughter that mattered. It would be the giant horse. The road outside town was quiet as Tom walked beside the giant horse. The sun began to lower, painting the land in warm gold. Dust rose softly under the horse's heavy steps, but the animal moved with care, never rushing, never stumbling. Tom lived in a small wooden house near the edge of open land. It was not much, but it was honest. A low fence surrounded it, and a worn barn stood nearby. As Tom reached the gate, the horse stopped on its own. Tom smiled slightly, as if he expected that. "You remember everything," Tom said quietly. Inside the barn, Tom brushed the horse slowly. Each stroke was careful. He checked the hooves, the legs, and the shoulders. The horse had worked long and hard in its life, yet it stood strong. Tom fed it grain mixed with hay, measured carefully so nothing was wasted. As night fell, Tom sat on the steps of his house, staring out at the open land. The market scene replayed in his mind, not with anger, but with thought. He knew men like Lewis. Loud, confident, certain that money made them untouchable. Tom had once believed that too. Years earlier, Tom had worked for a ranch owned by men like Lewis. He had given everything he had. When trouble came, they turned away. He lost his job, his savings, and his place. Only the horse stayed with him. That memory still lived in his chest, quiet but firm. The next morning, news spread quickly through town. A large transport of supplies was expected from the nearby hills. It included food, tools, and medicine. The road passed through a narrow valley, known for loose ground after rain. Lewis saw opportunity. He gathered his workers and prepared his fast horses. "We will take charge of the delivery," he said confidently. "Speed matters more than anything." Many agreed with him. Fast horses meant quick travel. Time meant profit. When Tom heard the news at a small feed store, he listened without speaking. The shop owner shook his head. "That valley can be dangerous after rain," the man said. "The ground shifts." Tom nodded. He had traveled those paths many times. Later that day, Tom saw Lewis riding out with his group. The fast horses moved proudly, heads high, legs light. Lewis waved to the crowd, smiling. Tom watched quietly. The sky darkened by afternoon. Clouds rolled in low and heavy. A steady rain began to fall, soaking the land. The dirt roads turned soft and uneven. Deep in the valley, the trouble began. Lewis's group slowed as the ground shifted under the horses' hooves. One cart leaned dangerously. The fast horses, built for speed, struggled to keep balance. Panic spread among the workers. "Careful," someone shouted. But it was too late. One wheel sank deep into the mud. The cart tilted, supplies sliding dangerously close to the edge of the path. The horses pulled, but the ground gave way more with each effort. Lewis jumped down, his boots quickly covered in mud. His face lost its confident color. "Pull harder," he shouted. The horses strained, breathing fast, but their light frames could not hold the weight. The cart did not move. Rain continued to fall. Night approached. Fear crept into the group. If the cart tipped fully, the supplies would be lost. Worse, someone could get hurt. Back in town, word reached Tom through a traveler who had turned back. "They are stuck in the valley," the man said. "Fast horses cannot move the load." Tom stood quietly for a moment. Then he closed the barn door behind him and led the giant horse out. The rain soaked them as they moved. The horse did not hesitate. Each step was firm and steady, even as the ground softened. By the time Tom reached the valley, darkness had begun to settle. Lanterns flickered near the stuck cart. The workers looked exhausted. Louis stood apart, his coat ruined, his pride shaken. When he saw Tom and the giant horse, his mouth opened slightly. "You," Louis said, disbelief in his voice. Tom did not respond. He assessed the situation calmly. He walked around the cart, checking the ground, the angle, the weight. "This horse is too big," one worker whispered nervously. Tom heard him. "Big does not mean careless," he replied. He adjusted the harness with practiced hands. The giant horse stood still, waiting, trusting. Louis hesitated. Everything in him wanted to refuse help. But the cart leaned further, and time was running out. "Can he do it?" Louis asked quietly. Tom met his eyes. "He can if we guide him right." There was no laughter now. No crowd. Only rain, mud, and the sound of breathing. Tom gave a low command. The horse leaned forward, muscles working slowly and evenly. The ground pressed under its weight, but instead of sinking, the horse spread its strength, step by step. The cart groaned. The workers held their breath. With one steady pull, the cart shifted. With another, it lifted free from the mud. The horse did not rush. It did not panic. It simply worked. When the cart finally rested on solid ground, silence filled the valley. Louis stared, speechless. Tom unhooked the harness and patted the horse's neck. "Good work," he said softly. The rain slowed. The crisis had passed. Louis stepped forward slowly. His voice was lower now. "I was wrong," he said. "I judged without knowing." Tom looked at him calmly. "Judgment is easy. Understanding takes time." As they prepared to return, something had changed. Not just in the valley, but in the eyes of everyone there. The giant horse stood quietly, rain dripping from its mane. And Louis knew, deep inside, that this was only the beginning of a lesson he could no longer avoid. The morning after the valley incident felt different in the town. People spoke in lower voices. News had traveled fast, as it always did. By sunrise, everyone knew that the rich man's fast horses had failed, and the poor cowboy's giant horse had saved the supplies. Tom did not seek attention. He returned to his small house before dawn, fed the horse, and rested. To him, the work was normal. The praise that followed felt strange and unnecessary. Louis, however, could not stop thinking. He sat at his large table, staring at papers he could not focus on. The image of the giant horse pulling the cart replayed in his mind again and again. He remembered his laughter at the market. He remembered his words. For the first time in many years, shame sat heavy on his chest. Later that day, Louis rode into town alone. His fast horses stayed behind. He walked through the market, noticing how people now looked at him differently. Some still respected his wealth, but others watched with quiet judgment. At a feed store near the road, Louis finally found Tom. Tom stood inside, selecting grain. The giant horse waited outside, calm as ever. Louis paused at the door, unsure how to speak. "Tom," he said finally. Tom turned. His expression was neutral, not cold, not warm. "I came to thank you," Louis said. "And your horse?" Tom nodded slightly. "The supplies mattered. That is all." Louis swallowed. "You could have left us there." "Yes," Tom replied. "But that is not how I live." Those words stayed with Louis long after he left the store. In the days that followed, change moved slowly but clearly. Louis began to observe rather than command. He asked questions. He listened. When he passed Tom on the road, he nodded instead of turning away. One afternoon, a problem arose on Louis's land. A bridge near the storage fields had weakened after the rain. Heavy loads could not cross. Workers stood unsure of what to do. Lewis arrived and looked at the damaged structure. He felt frustration rise, but he stopped himself. Instead of shouting, he thought. He remembered the giant horse. After a long pause, Lewis made a decision that surprised everyone. "Go get Tom," he said. When Tom arrived, he inspected the bridge carefully. He did not rush. He tested the ground, the wood, the support beams. "This bridge will hold if the weight is steady and centered," Tom said. "Fast movement will break it." Lewis nodded. "What do you suggest?" Tom glanced at the giant horse standing nearby. "Slow work. Strong balance." Some workers doubted, but Lewis raised his hand. "We will try." The giant horse crossed first, step by step, carrying supplies that would have broken weaker paths. The bridge held. For the workers, it was a turning point. They watched with respect, not only for the horse, but for the quiet man guiding it. Lewis felt something shift inside himself. He was learning that leadership was not about noise or pride. Days turned into weeks. Lewis began to rely on Tom for advice in difficult situations. He paid fairly. He listened fully. Tom accepted work when it was needed, never asking for more than what was right. Still, not everyone welcomed this change. A group of traders from a nearby town arrived, led by a man named Harlan. He was sharp-eyed and smooth-spoken. He noticed Lewis's growing respect for the poor cowboy and saw opportunity. During a private meeting, Harlan leaned forward and spoke carefully. "You are letting a poor man guide your decisions," he said. "People may start to think you are weak." Lewis stiffened. "He has proven his worth." Harlan smiled thinly. "Proven once does not mean proven always." The words planted doubt. That evening, Lewis stood on his balcony, watching the fields. He wondered if he was changing too fast. He wondered what others thought. At the same time, Tom sensed unease. He had learned long ago to read people without words. When Lewis approached him the next day, Tom noticed hesitation in his steps. "Is something wrong?" Tom asked calmly. Lewis hesitated, then spoke. "Some say I trust you too much." Tom nodded. "Trust should always be earned again each day." Lewis studied him. "Would you prove it again?" Tom did not look offended. "If the work requires it." The test came sooner than expected. A shipment needed to cross a steep ridge path, narrower and more dangerous than the valley. Fast horses could not pass safely. Delay would cost money. Harlan suggested turning back. Tom walked the path quietly. He examined the wind, the slope, the stone beneath his boots. "This path is possible," Tom said. "But only with patience." Lewis faced a choice. Listen to fear or trust calm strength. After a long breath, he made his decision. "We move forward," Lewis said. Harlan stepped back, his smile gone. As the giant horse stepped onto the ridge path, silence fell. Each step was slow, controlled. The load stayed balanced. Halfway across, loose stones shifted. Gasps rose from the workers. Tom raised his hand gently. The horse stopped instantly. "Wait," Tom said softly. The stones settled. With careful guidance, they crossed safely. On the other side, relief washed over the group. Lewis felt something he had not felt in years. Pride, not in ownership but in cooperation. Harlan said nothing. His influence weakened. That evening, Lewis stood beside Tom as the sun set. "You were right," Lewis said. "Strength without balance is nothing." Tom nodded. "And wealth without wisdom is fragile." The giant horse stood nearby, unmoving, steady as the ground beneath them. The town had changed. Lewis had changed. But the greatest test was still ahead. The town slowly began to change, but not everyone welcomed the change. While many people respected Tom and the giant horse, others felt uncomfortable. They were used to loud power, quick decisions, and clear lines between rich and poor. Quiet strength made them uneasy. Lewis noticed this tension. He saw it in the way some traders spoke in low voices. He felt it during meetings when certain men avoided Tom's presence. Even though Lewis had learned important lessons, pressure from the outside world did not disappear easily. One morning, a serious problem arrived. A dry season had stretched longer than expected. Water levels dropped. Crops in nearby fields began to suffer. If the town did not act quickly, many families would struggle before the next harvest. Lewis called a meeting at the storage hall. Farmers, traders, and workers gathered. Voices filled the room, full of worry and disagreement. "We need to move water from the northern wells," one man said. "The path is too rough," another argued. "Fast wagons will break the road," someone shouted. Lewis listened quietly. He looked at Tom, who stood near the wall, calm as always. "What do you think?" Lewis asked. Tom stepped forward slowly. The room grew quiet. "There is an old stone channel beyond the ridge," Tom said. "It was built long ago. The ground around it is weak, but the channel itself is strong. Water can be guided through it if we clear the path carefully." Some men shook their heads. "That will take too long. It is risky." Lewis raised his hand. "Risk exists either way. We choose the one that saves the most." Work began that same day. Tom guided the process, not by shouting orders, but by showing where to step, where to dig, and where to stop. The giant horse carried heavy stones away from the channel, moving slowly and steadily. Days passed. The sun was harsh. Muscles ached. Still, the work continued. Then trouble appeared again. Harlan returned. He rode into town with confidence, gathering a group of traders. He spoke of profit lost, of slow work, of foolish trust. His words spread doubt like dry wind over grass. "That cowboy delays everything," Harlan said. "While you struggle, others move ahead." Some listened. Fear made his words sound sharp and convincing. That evening, Lewis was confronted by several landowners. "We cannot wait any longer," one said. "If this fails, we lose everything." Lewis felt pressure rise in his chest. Old habits whispered to him, telling him to take control, to silence doubt with authority. He looked at Tom. Tom spoke calmly. "If you rush this, the channel will collapse. Then there will be nothing left to save." Silence followed. Lewis took a deep breath. "We continue as planned." The decision was not popular, but it was firm. The next day brought the hardest test yet. As the final stones were moved, part of the ground near the channel shifted. A deep crack formed. Workers stepped back in fear. Water had not yet flowed. Everything balanced on one moment. Harlan saw his chance. "This is proof," he shouted. "Stop now." Tom stepped forward. He studied the crack, the weight, the direction of the land. "The channel can still hold," Tom said. "But only if the pressure is guided slowly." Lewis nodded. "Tell us what to do." Tom guided the giant horse into position. The horse lowered its head, calm and focused. With careful steps, it pressed support stones into place, using its weight evenly. Everyone watched in silence. The crack stopped growing. Slowly, water began to flow through the channel. First a trickle, then a steady stream. Cheers broke out across the field. The landowners stared in disbelief. Farmers smiled with relief. Harlan stood frozen, his plan failing in front of everyone. Lewis turned to the crowd. "This town survives because of patience, not pride." No one argued. That night, the town gathered quietly. There was no celebration filled with noise. Only shared food, tired smiles, and deep relief. Lewis approached Tom near the fire. "I once thought money was the strongest thing I owned," Lewis said. "Now I know it is trust." Tom nodded. "Trust grows when actions stay honest." Harlan left town before sunrise. His influence was gone. As weeks passed, crops recovered. Water flowed. The town stabilized. Lewis made another decision. He opened land access for shared use. He paid fair wages. He asked before acting. People noticed. Children watched the giant horse with wonder, no longer fear. Farmers greeted Tom with respect. One evening, Lewis walked with Tom along the ridge. "You changed more than this land," Lewis said. "You changed me." Tom looked at the horizon. People change when they listen. The sun dipped low. The giant horse stood beside them, steady and silent. But far beyond the hills, clouds gathered again. One final challenge waited. The clouds that gathered beyond the hills did not bring rain. They brought cold wind and uncertainty. Winter arrived early, stronger than expected. The land hardened, and travel became difficult. Even strong plans faced new tests. The town prepared as best it could. Food was stored carefully. Firewood was shared. Lewis worked alongside others, no longer above them, but among them. Tom continued his quiet routine, caring for the giant horse and helping where needed. One morning, a message arrived from a distant settlement. Their road had collapsed under ice and rock. Supplies could not reach them. Children and elders were struggling. The path between the towns was long, narrow, and dangerous. The town gathered again. "That road is impossible in winter," someone said. "We will lose animals if we try," another warned. Lewis looked at Tom. Tom listened, then spoke. "The road is possible. Not fast. Not easy. But possible." Silence filled the room. Lewis nodded. "Then we help." Preparation began immediately. Supplies were packed carefully. Weight was balanced. The giant horse was chosen to lead, not because of strength alone, but because of its calm. The journey began before dawn. Cold wind cut through the land. The path climbed higher, twisting along frozen edges. The giant horse stepped forward slowly, placing each hoof with care. Tom walked beside it, guiding, never forcing. Halfway through the journey, ice cracked beneath one section of the path. The group stopped. Fear returned. Tom studied the ground. "We go one at a time. Slow and steady." Hours passed. Every step mattered. The giant horse moved first, breaking thin ice gently, spreading its weight. Others followed. At one narrow point, a supply wagon slipped slightly. Gasps rose. Tom raised his hand. The horse stopped instantly. "Wait," Tom said calmly. The wagon steadied. By nightfall, lights appeared ahead. The distant settlement. People came out, tired and hopeful. When they saw the supplies, tears filled their eyes. Help had arrived. No cheers followed. Only quiet thanks and deep relief. The return journey was just as careful. When the group reached home, the town welcomed them with warmth and gratitude. Lewis stood beside Tom as the fire burned low. "You once stood alone in the market while I laughed," Lewis said quietly. "Now this town stands because of you." Tom shook his head. "The town stands because people chose to listen." Lewis smiled. "And because a giant horse showed us what real strength looks like." From that winter forward, the town remembered. Stories were told, not about wealth or speed, but about patience, respect, and quiet power. Children grew up hearing how a poor cowboy and a giant horse changed everything. Lewis continued to lead, but with humility. He taught others to value wisdom over noise. Tom remained simple. He fixed fences, guided paths, helped neighbors. He never asked for recognition. The giant horse aged, moving slower each year, but still steady. When it finally rested for the last time, the town honored it with silence and gratitude. Years later, visitors asked about the change. An old farmer would smile and say, "It started with laughter. It ended with understanding." And the road through the valley remained strong, built not by speed, but by steady steps. The lesson stayed. Quiet strength lasts longer than loud pride.